Hello, people. I'm Lee Cole 3, and I'm here with my partner, James Proctor. James, how you doing today?
Hey Lee, doing well. How are you doing?
Pretty good. I got up early this morning, and they had the Get Gotti on. It just started, so I wanted to
Yes.
talk to you about the Get Gotti. And
hmm
you watched probably what the first chapter, the number one.
Yeah. So they got three shows. I'm sorry, three chapters or three episodes, I guess is what you'd call it. And so, yeah, I watched most of the first one, and so the other two are up out there too. So I'll make sure to watch those. This evening.
And so, what I find fascinating is you watched the first part. You and I were in this genre. We did two shows
hmm
basically called Gangsters or Pranksters. One of them was Sal Polisi, and the
hmm
other one was Anthony Ruggiano. Now, here's
Yes.
what we know about them: they were fringe guys at best
Right.
that tell a lot of stories. Does that right away hurt the show? Get Gotti?
Yeah, I mean, to me, it hurts credibility for anyone that is a mobologist, anyone that actually knows much about that life. I mean, who are they gearing this towards? To me, if I was doing a documentary like this, I would want to get the most credible people. And it doesn't matter that the general public, many in the general public won't even know better. And that's what part of the problem with this is that people assume that, oh wow, we got this Sal Polisi guy. He was such a gangster. And then we got this Anti Ruggiano guy that was Fat Andy's son and was so involved in the life. And so the thing is that they're telling stories that they weren't even around. So that's what bothers me about the credibility of the show. And then the other person they brought in was a girlfriend of Frank Lino that named Andrea that had cooperated back in '92 on a drug trial. So that's who they went after to interview.
And let's talk about Sal Polisi first. He was an informant in the '80s. He became an informant before being an informant was even popular. Is that right?
Yeah, he most of what he did was in the late '60s and the '70s where he was involved in the life. He was Crazy Sal, and then he flipped in before the commission trial in '85. So what happened was he wasn't even involved when Gotti became the boss.
But he claims to know John Gotti on the street. We
Yeah.
hear otherwise. We hear maybe he's seen him. Maybe
hmm
they talked one or two times, but he's not what he presents because his stories about John Gotti being at his Sinatra club, which we can't even prove that,
Yeah.
uh, made no sense because they had John Gotti sitting down playing cards with his mortal enemies.
Yeah, like Tommy D. Simone and all that. That just wasn't possible.
And at that time, John Gotti was pretty sure that Tommy DeSimone killed who was it? Can't think
Yeah,
of his name
talk
right
to
now.
his friend. Yeah, on good Billy Bats.
No, 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 no. The
Oh,
one
the
that they
other one. Yeah. I can't remember, but
yeah,
yeah,
I can't think of his
exactly.
name.
There were two people that were killed. That this guy, rubbed Gotti the wrong way, and so there was no way that they were going to be sitting down playing cards.
And several other people. And but we put out that, and we showed several reasons why. What I don't get on Netflix is they put gangster under these names. They never put informant.
Yeah,
They make them look like they're gangsters right off the street. Do you
yeah.
do you think that they should let us know that these guys were informants, basically rats?
Yeah, I mean, I think they should. I mean, they were, they don't have any issue saying when someone was a federal prosecutor or someone was, was uh, a judge or someone was, someone on the strike force. So, to me, why not? Why not put the truth on it? That was someone that was became an informant.
And what's this lady's name? Andrea Giovanni? Is that her name?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah, Giovino,
Yeah.
I
Now,
believe. Yeah,
now she actually has evidence that she was around gangsters. She has pictures
yeah,
and stuff.
She
I
does.
mean, Polisi and the only picture that you ever see Ruggiano was with his father. I mean,
Hmm.
this woman actually has pictures of guys with Frank Lino, who became a rat, but
Yeah.
this woman became an informant also, didn't she?
Yeah, so this was like in the early '90s, and she wrote a book later. She was, she was around Frank Lino. She was around a lot of the people in that life, the Bonanos, basically Bonanos, and Lino was the guy that escaped from the three Capos murder, and so
Right.
yeah, he gets out, and then. But anyway, and this was like what 80, 81, somewhere like that, and so she flipped in '92. He didn't flip until around 2000 or so, 2002, when they had the trial of Joe Massino. So basically, when all the people started flipping, testify against Joe Massino, that's when he was one of those guys, and he was a
So
capo
she
regime.
so she gave evidence before Lino did.
Yes, yeah, about 10 years before.
Okay, that's right. It's kind of funny because if you don't research this stuff, I'm not a mobologist. What I learn is what I learn day to day.
All right.
And but when you hear about this woman, which I didn't know much about, but we talked to Angel Gotti, and Angel Gotti says the same thing, that
Mm-hmm.
Ruggiano was very fringe, at least. Uh, we had we've had somebody on here with a very popular show that said that he's seen him, even though he was with John Gotti all the time.
Yeah.
He's seen Ruggiano a couple times.
All right.
And Ruggiano in here says that he used to go over to the Bergen and have Danishes and coffee in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a
Yeah.
new one?
Yeah. I mean, I don't think that so anything about mobsters and mob guys, they tend not to start their day off very early.
They're usually going home in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody knows that John Gotti started his during the afternoon. Everybody started
Mm-hmm.
meeting at these clubs in the afternoon, first of all.
Yeah.
So
Right.
he's sitting there. Why would a guy like John Gotti, that has this a real tight group of guys his whole life? Why
Mm-hmm.
would Anthony Ruggiano be one of those guys?
Yeah, and you can go back into Ed Scarpo. He did a series on Anthony Ruggiano before Ruggiano got onto YouTube and all that. And what was said then is that Ruggiano wasn't allowed around those guys, and basically for several years in the mid '80s after he got out prison, and he wasn't allowed to really come around until '88. And where he came around was with Tony Lee and the folks like Bobby Glasses and those groups, Little Dom Pizzonia or Skinny Dom Pizzonia. So those were the ones that he was with, that group, which was another group in Queens. It wasn't there with Gotti. And so this was like '88, so my phone fell down. Sorry. So this was '88 when, you remember, the murder happened of his brother-in-law. So what happened is, during this part of the Gotti, they're talking about when Castellano got killed, and then when Gotti had the Christmas Eve party, and when he finally in January.
And I'm sorry, the Christmas Eve party was.
That's fine.
Right, the Christmas Eve party was right after, about 10 days after Castellano was killed?
Yes, exactly. So Castellano was around December 16th, I believe, and then Christmas Eve party was December 24th. And so this wasn't the one that, there's multiple Christmas parties in that life. So this wasn't one that was with families and all that. Where it started was at the Raven Night, and these were made guys that were there to basically pay homage to John Gotti. He wasn't yet made, but they knew that he would probably be the one that would be made.
And according to John Gotti Jr.'s book, they started off at the Raven Night.
They started there.
Guys, which was made guys being invited, are very high guys.
Oh yeah, they were very high.
It would have to be like someone like Watts.
Yeah.
Okay, so and so then they left Raven Night and went back to the Bergen. And
Right.
so, and these were the made guys that they were welcoming people into their life. And
Hmm.
Ruggiano claims that he was at the Bergen and that they were congratulating people, and he had no idea that John
Hmm.
was made. First of all, it was already known on the street that John was made, and he already was at the Ravenite before he even got to the Berg.
Right.
So he's acting like he's surprised. He's sitting. It makes no sense. Not only that, he was ordered because of his drug use to stay away. When was he ordered to stay away?
Yeah, and that's something that's what I got from Ed Scarpo's. He just said in the 80s, and so that could have been any time. But what we know is that that Ruggiano was in prison for part of that time, and so no one saw him around those guys in 85, 86 during this part of Get Gotti. So that's the main point, was that no one that I've talked to that knew Gotti, that was around Gotti or around those people, saw Anthony Ruggiano, who claims to be an associate, being around. And in fact, his father, Fat Andy, was in prison when the hit on Castellano went down, and he didn't get out till later.
And this is another thing with him. He says that when his mother was hit, that he spoke to his father in prison. First of all, they don't let felons go visit people in prison.
Right.
I mean, that's just a known fact,
Hmm.
especially someone like Fat Andy's with his son coming in to visit him. See, a lot of this stuff is common sense. If people listen to this stuff and just put together what they know, it's common sense.
Yeah.
And this is what they keep doing. Now you're talking Sal Polisi. Here he is. He's talking like they underneath him they put gangster. He's not a gangster. He's an informant. Even Mikey Scars says we are not gangsters. We lost that title, but yet they go on these shows and they still want that gangster title, don't they?
Yeah, and and that may be the company that did this video. They're going to try to hype it up and make it appear more than it is.
I think Sal Polisi has no problem with them putting gangster
Oh
underneath his
heck
name.
no, he doesn't have any problem with it. I don't. I'm just saying, I don't know if he told him to say, "Hey, put down, I'm gangster." Maybe he did, but I know that he had no problem with it. And he claims to, be this gangster. We hear him on YouTube all the time, but I think Mikey Scars is correct. When you cooperate and make that decision, then you lose that gangster card. I think that's a good point.
So Mikey, you know what I find, and I'm not bad mouthing Mikey, but this is just how I feel. I'm just going to be honest about this. I wish Mikey would come out and just say what the importance of Ruggiano was, because Mikey knows he was there. He was
Hmm.
at the Bergen. He was at the Ravenite. He was with all these guys,
Right.
and he could pick these guys up
Hmm.
and come out and say whether you see it. From what we understand, I'm not going to say much more, but come on, there's a lot of people that know that this guy was not in front of these clubs all the time, and all these pictures taken by the FBI, the most photographed man ever. Is there any pictures anywhere with Ruggiano?
No, there's none.
Is there any pictures with his father in him?
Well, there's pictures with his father,
No,
of
I'm
his
talking
father.
about after 80. I'm talking about after Castellano hit, after 85.
No, I haven't seen
No.
any.
Okay. There's pictures of him before then.
Right before.
So,
Yeah, I think he was
and
exiled to Florida for a lot of, towards the end. My
and
understanding.
what was the relationship between Fat Andy and John Gotti?
Yeah, they didn't get along. And, they did not. They had issues, and we've talked to people that were close to, that would know, that knows John Gotti and knows the Ruggianos, and they just didn't get along. And not sure the reason, but they stopped getting along at least in the 80s, and they were part of the same crew, obviously, the Faticos back in the 70s, but in 60s. So for whatever reason, they just didn't get along. I know that Fat Andy was close to the Carrazzo brothers, Nicky Carrazzo. I know that later on there was some issues there, but I don't know the reason, but I just know that they didn't have a good relationship. Talking about Fat Andy and John Gotti, at least after Gotti became boss.
And see, this is another big problem. Ruggiano, the son, keeps putting his father near John Gotti.
Hmm.
It wasn't that way. These were two strong-head gangsters, real
Yeah,
gangsters,
they
that
were.
had personalities where they just didn't like each other. Very
Right.
common in the mob.
Yeah.
And you have a very powerful man like Fat Andy and a very powerful man like John Gotti. They're not going to hurt each other because Fat Andy has a big crew. You're not going to
Hmm.
mess with Fat Andy. And Fat Andy's not going to mess with John Gotti because he knows what that will lead. Uh,
Yeah.
Very powerful men that did not get along.
Right. And Fat Andy lost some of his luster, when he went to prison. And that's something that's unfortunate. We always hear that, like Ruggiano Jr., and we hear this from other guys that cooperate. They always say, "Oh, well, they didn't take care of me when I was in prison. Why should I be faithful to the oath?" Or why did, you hear that excuse all the time. But you have a lot of people that didn't cooperate that went through the same thing where, they lost their businesses that they had or rackets, and, they had to settle it once they got back on the streets.
And you know what's funny though, James? When
Hmm.
this woman started talking, I'm like, oh, she's got to be full of crap. And then I'm checking
Hmm.
up on her. No, she's not. She's probably more legit than these two guys.
Oh yeah, that's what I was, yeah, because she was definitely involved. I mean, during that drug trial, there was 10 to 12 gangsters that she was involved with, that were involved in the drug ring with the Bonanos, and most of them are associates, but still, she definitely knew those people, and she was Frank Lino's girlfriend, and a lot of times these it just depends for whatever reason. Sometimes these gangsters will let their significant others know what's going on and get them
Well, she
involved.
was involved. She was dealing.
Hmm.
Uh, she she was with Frank Lino, and they were actually. Uh, Sorry, guys, I'll tell this to Sal Polisi, and I'll tell this to Ruggiano. She was actually more of a gangster than you guys.
Yeah.
I mean, there's evidence. There's evidence. She has pictures of being with gangsters. Everybody knew that was Frank Lino's girlfriend. Frank Lino became a rat, but the fact of the matter is, Frank Lino was very serious guy in the street, wasn't he?
Oh yeah, yeah, he
She
was. And
knew who Frank Lino was hooked up with.
yeah, he was hooked up with the Bonanos. He became a capo regime for the Bonanos. He was close to Joe Messino before Messino collapsed. Because they find what happened was that he almost got killed with the three capos, but after that, they kind of made up, and so he was a pretty big deal with the Bonanos.
Yeah, yeah, and so there's evidence of this Andrea woman being around these guys.
Oh
But
yeah, yeah.
I would say Sal Polisi, well, cameras broken back then. There's no evidence of you with anybody. Uh, Ruggiano, there's evidence of you being with your father. That's it. There's every one of these guys. They all had cameras. They all took pictures. You see pictures everywhere, but you never see pictures of these guys with the guys that they say what they were involved with.
Right.
Even John A. Light has pictures
Yeah,
with
that's true.
Junior or being arrested with the car being pulled over in New York. At least there's something there with John
Yeah,
A. Light.
yeah, that's
But these
true.
guys have nothing.
Yeah, the person that he very high level Gambino told me that only twice that he knew of that Ruggiano Jr. came around. This was after '88, and one time he did go with he went to see John Gotti Jr. and they were outside the club.
And
But
how many guys went to see John Gotti Jr.?
oh my gosh, all the time. I mean, he
But there's
was
no evidence of them hanging around. and we got it on good. We know what John Gotti Jr. thinks of Ruggiano and that whole thing.
Yeah, there's
Um,
tapes of Ruggiano, not Ruggiano, but of John Gotti Jr. with like Jimmy Brown and Danny Marino and Carranzo and those folks, and because it's a point of contention because they had to come to the talk to Junior. But yeah, I mean, you don't see any. You only had him come around twice, Ruggiano Jr. and the feds. There's no photographs of him.
there was just one guy that turned evidence that ratted, and this is kind of funny. He gave Ruggiano a phone, and he said to Ruggiano, "Here, you can use this phone." But at that time, the guy was cooperating with the feds, so Ruggiano got the phone, and it was a Fed's phone.
Oh my gosh!
So he's using this Fed phone,
Huh.
and the feds hear everything Ruggiano's saying,
Oh my
everything.
gosh! Wow.
And it was kind of a funny story because Ruggiano's wife was like, "Well, why can't I get one of those phones?" Not having no idea. And I heard this story recently. Funny story.
Yeah.
So here you got this guy running around talking on a phone to the feds, and he doesn't have any idea he's talking to the feds.
Right.
Tell me that ain't funny.
That is funny, and I guess he was thinking that they were just stolen phones, and that they, because there was a big scam, right, of phone cards and all that stuff back then.
And those phones weren't protected like they are now, the way you could lock them and all that, and like an Apple phone's very hard to break into and stuff.
Yeah.
But can you imagine what the feds were thinking when they said to this guy, "Go give Ruggiano a phone"?
Right.
Because at that time, Ruggiano was dealing drugs, and they wanted to get him on it.
Yeah.
And so they gave him the phone, and he's talking on the phone, and the wife's bugging him for an FBI phone.
Yeah.
Oh, you keep learning these stories.
Yeah.
With these guys, and it's amazing. I mean, the old school gangsters, they go to the phone booth a few blocks away. They would talk on it and walk away. They wouldn't be handed a damn phone to talk on.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think it was Jimmy Brown in his club had a sign about that, basically saying to don't talk because of the feds might be listening, and he had a funny phrase that was used on the wall. But the thing was that these old timers were very serious about not talking on phones. They would go to a payphone. They would do walk and talks. They weren't going to do business in the Ravenite or the Bergen. That was something that frustrated the feds, because these guys wouldn't do it, and these guys knew that more than likely there was a bug inside the club. So that's just what happened.
And one thing that these guys say that really is annoying, when they say, "Well, I never testified when my father was alive and John Gotti was alive. I would never do it."
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean? That you wouldn't do it when they were alive, but you did it afterwards. So that means that when you wouldn't do it when they were alive, you wanted to do it, but you knew better than not to do it.
Yeah, I mean,
there's a big difference.
I just think it's an excuse. I mean,
excuse.
Yeah, I don't understand that. Maybe maybe the father had that much sway over him that he wouldn't testify.
Well, he wouldn't do it because he knew who his father was.
Yeah, right.
That's it. So basically, he's admitting that the only reason I didn't rat is because my father was alive.
Right.
But once everybody died, I had no trouble ratting. Yeah. And he's not the only informant that says that. We have a few of them out there that have said that. They use they'll say somebody in power that they respected was alive, or they'll say their father, or they didn't want to embarrass him. But he had no problem embarrassing the mother.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Hey, listen, Mom, I'm gonna rat it. I'll embarrass the hell out of Mom, but not Dad.
It creates problems for their families. I mean, these guys that rat and cooperate, it creates, especially back then in the 80s and 90s, when people did that, the whole families would get ostracized. And so they would end up, end up having to disown the person that cooperated. I mean, and plus back then the cooperator, they couldn't walk around the streets of New York. They had to be relocated and all that type of stuff. So I mean, it's a lot different back then. But yeah, and you didn't have hardly anyone. You know, it didn't start happening until you had it every once in a while. Polissi was one of the first guys that did that, and then you had later Gravano, all these other folks, but it didn't become prevalent until the 90s, where you had all these people coming out. And now it's just crazy.
And these informants, he had no trouble. His son Gerard almost got beat up in the club because of who he was, and and it was Peter Gotti that stopped it from happening.
Yeah.
He stopped that beating from happening. Someone called up and said, "Hey, Gerard's here. He's being a real wise ass. Can we kick his?" They said, "No. Make sure nothing happens to him."
Right, and that was something that they did. They wanted to protect. Even with what Sammy had done, which was, that up until that time, it was the most
unheard
of. And then his son and daughter, they were still protected by the family that Sammy testified against.
And Sammy cared so much about him, he brought him into a drug ring that he was. He'll say his son started it, but we'll stick with Sammy.
No, he was the mastermind. Sammy was the mastermind. He wanted to have a Gravano crime family. He called it the Arizona Mafia. His son was definitely involved. They were working with white supremacists. And also the other thing was that Sammy threatened his girlfriend and put a gun to his own son's head because he said his son was disrespecting the family. So when you see that, someone like Sammy, that he doesn't even have regard for his family, his son.
Okay, and something, I'm just glad that I found out more about this woman, and I'm not praising her because she did become a rat, but she actually has evidence of being around real gangsters and doing stuff with them. These other guys. Now, listen, we know that Sal Polisi was in the streets. He was a tough guy, but when the time came, he folded like an accordion. But his exaggeration is. We have to understand John Gotti was a certain type of guy, the Caniglias and Gene Gotti. There was a certain group he hung around with. You'll see pictures of Gene Gotti with his group, like Joey Scopo and those friends. You'll see them all together.
Right.
And supposedly Scopo was tight with Polissi. But, you got Scopo in pictures, a couple pictures with Gene Gotti, but you have no pictures of Polissi anywhere, ever.
No, you don't have that. And so and that's the thing is especially when you look at John Gotti, even the guys, even before John became boss, that, the stuff with what Quack did, the feds were on them, on that crew. And so if Anthony Ruggiano was around, you would have at least seen at least one photo of him being photographed, but just never happened.
Oh, the feds were all over Quack before anything happened with Castellano.
Yeah, exactly. Ruggiero is because he was
he triggered it.
Yeah, he triggered a lot of the stuff with the Mafia commission trials and a lot of that stuff because he was running his mouth.
Well, it's just very interesting stuff. People, I'm going to say, please subscribe, hit the like button, the reminder bell, the thank you. If you want to donate money to help support the show, you can. If you don't, we have no problem with that. And also, besides that, we also have another channel, and this is with Angel Gotti, and it's called, and it's our Patreon page, which is growing, and it's called My Father's Daughter, and the link will be underneath here if you want to join. And we've been putting up quite a bit of stuff lately, and we're going to be starting lives there. We have a certain number of people we want before we start our lives, but we're going to start doing lives on the Patreon page. So if you haven't, please sub there. And if you first week's free. If you don't like it, you don't have to stay.
Yeah.
So is there anything you'd like to say before we close this out?
The only thing I'll say regarding the, Get Gotti, we'll give more of a detailed analysis of it later, probably before the end of the month, I'm assuming. But we just, we got to have a chance to watch it. I mean, like I said, we kind of got through the first episode. There's 3. Hopefully it'll get a little better. I mean, again, the general public, they like this stuff. Anything with Gotti's going to get a lot of people. In fact, when I went into Netflix, that was it was the thing. It was the show that was like displayed, So, I'm sure it'll do well.
And once again, it shows the video that we did that John Gotti is the most popular mobster ever.
Yeah.
Here we are, 30 years after he was sent to prison, a little bit over 30 years, and they're still talking about him. All these other guys. It's the same story that we've heard 1,000 times, just different informants. Yeah. Not gangsters, informants.
Yeah, different informants, yeah.
Okay. So, James, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Tell us underneath what you think. If you disagree with us, put us down there. We're not going to erase it unless you tell me that that something's really wrong with the way my body looks or something. But, even if you say I got no teeth, I'll tell you, don't say teeth, say tooth. James?
Yeah.
You
Thank
take
you
care,
so
my man.
much. Yeah, appreciate it.